Welcome back to the weekly Xbox Indies, your source for Xbox indie game reviews.
Yay!
Cutouts is a game made entirely of felt, and like the material that its world is made of, the game starts out softly to ease you into things. The fundamentals are all pretty standard stuff. Jump on an enemy's head, throw the fluffy tail of bunnies like a turtle shell to defeat enemies in a row, and collect 100 buttons for an extra life. But once you hit the 4th level, things get much trickier, and the tone of the game quickly changes from bright and cheery to dark and foreboding. Or at least as foreboding as felt can get. But as the challenge ramps up, certain nuances arise in the gameplay. For example, invincible enemies that were once mere annoyances become vital puzzle-solving tools as you bounce off their heads to reach platforms. There are only 9 levels, so Cutouts is shorter than a lot of other indie platformers on the 360, but its unique visual style and challenging gameplay still make it a great download. Deadly Space is a very robust entry into the tower defense genre. Before you even enter a level, there are plenty of options to choose from. There are 6 factions to play as, each with their own set of towers and strategies. Then there are 3 classes to choose, which further augments how your towers behave. This adds a ton of replay value to the game, as each faction really does encourage a different way to play. Once you're in a level, it's fairly standard tower defense gameplay, but with one caveat. Each level restricts the number of towers you can have active at one time. This made things extremely challenging when I was first starting out, but as I kept playing, the restriction helped to make me think more carefully about how my limited resources were used. There are 30 single-player levels, but then there are also 42 multiplayer levels, with each one specifically designed for 2, 3, or 4 players. The multiplayer modes are well balanced, so long as you and your friends work together, with each player only able to place towers in certain areas. There's not really a story or context to the game, which seems odd since the game offers different factions as if they were all supposed to fit together into a storyline that just never got written. And though the asking price may be a bit higher than it should be, Deadly Space is still a great game for tower defense fans. Dungeon Tales puts you in control of 4 different adventurers to solve puzzles and battle through winding dungeons. The Archer and Warrior are your basic attacking characters, for different ranges. The Thief lays traps that damage foes who walk over them, and the Healer can restore health both to allies and NPCs. The story switches between these characters, sometimes paired with each other and sometimes alone, which is an interesting, if perhaps underutilized storytelling mechanic through the game's dozen or so levels. When playing alone, some truly terrible AI takes control of your allies, causing them to either run headfirst into battle and die, or wander aimlessly, forcing you to backtrack to find them. This is definitely a game best played with friends. There's also a random mode that puts you straight into the action without any of the plot or rudimentary puzzles of the main game. But unless you have 4 friends playing, it's a chaotic mess. Dungeon Tales is an interesting concept, but only the most adventurous gamer will likely get into it. And even then, only with friends by their side. Elemental Orbs is a Tetris-style puzzle game that might be too complicated for its own good. Instead of clearing lines, you clear colors by matching groups of same-colored pieces together. Each color corresponds to a different element, as well as a different effect on the pieces around it. For example, fire tiles burn any tiles above them, while acid tiles burn below, and water can push tiles down to fill in any gaps. Clearing tiles earns you money, which can be used to buy the next piece in whichever element you choose. That's already a lot to take in, but then there are also more elements, skull tiles to take into account, and the fact that it seems completely arbitrary how many of a color you need to collect before they clear from the board. It's just too much to keep track of at once, and makes the game feel much more cluttered than it should be. I feel like Elemental Orbs could have been a great puzzle game if the developer had just shown a little more restraint and focused the gameplay around either the elemental effects or incorporating a shop into a puzzle game.
Nay.
Controdazone is a twin-stick shooter version of King of the Hill, where the hill is constantly moving. Notice how it looks like all 4 players are having seizures. Getting hit knocks you back a tiny amount, but then there's no grace period, so you can easily get hit immediately again, and again, and again, so that your player is just twitching there in place. To say that it's annoying, Get Rich or Die Gaming is a classically styled adventure game that tries way too hard to be funny. Most of the game's jokes fall flat due to poor writing, poor voice acting, or a combination of the two. It's like the game was written by a middle schooler who thinks that yelling obscenities is the key to humor. I could overlook the bad jokes if the adventure gameplay were at least good, but it's not. Moving your character around and moving your cursor to interact with people are mapped to different control sticks, and the puzzles are all of a very rudimentary get item X at location Y and bring it back here nature. There have been some good adventure games from Xbox indie developers so far, but this is not one of them.
Goodbye. Fare thee well.